Scarlett Johansson is dressing like a cheap hooker, and she's driving around a van trying to seduce men. Yeah. Okay, so Under the Skin is a film I caught recently. I missed it when it was out in the cinema, so I actually bought it on DVD recently. I'd heard a lot of good things about it. It's a film which is directed by Jonathan Glazer, who directed the excellent Sexy Beast a couple of years ago. And he has a very heavy sort of background in relation to music videos and advertising, and it quite shows in relation to this. It's got kind of a mixed review from critics. Some people are praising this, to the heavens, saying that it's an absolutely amazing film, a bit of a masterpiece. Other people are saying it's a little pretentious. And unfortunately, the line between art and pretentiousness is very, very fine. So, kind of which is it? Well, for my money, it leans a bit more towards art. There are elements of it which I suppose could be construed as pretentious, but this is definitely going to be a movie which is looked at, in film school in years to come. People are going to be looking at the themes and what different things mean, and sort of getting their own meanings from a lot of the movie. So we're following Scarlett Johansson around as a nameless woman who's actually an alien, and she comes to Earth, and effectively what's happening is she's preying on men around the streets of Glasgow and Scotland, and she's seducing them by bringing them back to her flat, which is some sort of black featureless void, and she's lulling them into this sort of, I don't know, it's kind of like a sort of a sensor or like a suspended animation kind of thing, where they sort of, after a day or two, they kind of dissolve into this firmament and they just disappear off. We're never really told what this is for. It's obviously for food or energy or something like that. It's not just for kicks, because we see her as sort of a very emotionless person. But as the movie goes on, we see her sort of grow as a person. She kind of interacts with a lot of people in the streets of Glasgow. This is one of the great bits about the movie, and it's one of the things which really does sort of come across. A lot of the people she stops to, and a lot of the guys she talks to in the window or gives lifts to, some of them are professional actors, the majority of them aren't. So a lot of this is just you're filming the people and their actual reactions, which is really interesting. I'd love to know what these people sort of thought once they found out that it was Scarlett Johansson, kind of a bit of a movie icon. Now, Scarlett's turning into a bit of a genre kind of actress here, and she is absolutely excellent in this piece. She goes from being very quiet, very predatory, very sort of conniving and thoughtful in relation to her next victim, to being completely disarming, totally charming, and being absolutely lovely with that really, really nice kind of sexy British accent, which is really, really good. As the movie goes along, we learn that she kind of sort of empathizes. This is kind of, I suppose, there's two particular points which, this is made up in. There's one point where it's kind of disturbing, where there's a guy there's a kid drowning. There's a guy and he sort of tries to go and save them. She just watches, and when the guy comes up on the beach and he collapses on the floor, she essentially beats him to death with a rock, takes him back to her apartment, and sort of kind of absorbs him. It's quite disturbing, but it's filmed really, really quite well. It's quite bleak. The colours are quite grey and blue, and it's all very kind of dark and twilighty. It's kind of put together then, or it's contrasted with a point later whereby she tries to seduce this guy who comes to her, and he seems to have some sort of skin condition. It's like neurofibromatosis or something, and she kind of takes pity on him and she sort of lets him go. But sort of as it goes on, she starts to empathize, and I'm sure that, look, there's smarter people than me are going to read an awful lot into this, but as she becomes more empathetic and as she sort of grows as a person, this kind of seems to lead to her downfall, as she kind of starts interacting with people, and she starts trying to eat food and it doesn't work. She meets a guy at one point and she starts kind of the early stages of a relationship with a guy, and they go to bed or whatever, and she's shocked by her body and all that kind of thing. She doesn't understand it, but there's a dawning sense of her own kind of self-awareness, which is really, really interesting. Unfortunately, it's not explored enough. I would like to see an awful lot more of that. The film itself is beautiful to look at. It's absolutely fantastic. It runs about an hour and 48 minutes. So it's a long film. It's not dialogue heavy. It's a very visual film. It's aesthetically very good. I do think this is going to be a film school film in years to come, or even now it could be. As I said, there's smarter people than me who are analysing this film, and they'll be able to read an awful lot more into it than I can. Scarlett Johansson is absolutely fantastic in this. She just, as I said, she goes, she's able to kind of, alter her personality through her acting by, going sort of predatory and kind of, sort of you know, I suppose sneaky in the way she interacts with people, to being charming and, you know, sort of full of life and interest in sort of beguiling men to come back to her flat with her. I thought the movie was fantastically directed. I loved the look of the film. As I said earlier on, there's a fine line between art and pretentiousness. For me, it just basically gets over the line into the term of sort of art, but, you know, I can see how some of this would be seen as a little bit pretentious. I'm going to give the movie about 6 out of 10. I wasn't as blown away by it as an awful lot more sort of reviewers were. I'm kind of siding with people who, I suppose, kind of would say that they wanted a bit more. I wanted more of her character. I wanted to see the development of her more sort of empathetic side before the end of the film. I wanted to see, I suppose, more of the interactions with people, and I wanted potentially a little bit more dialogue, but that's just me. That's not to say that the movie isn't excellent in many, many respects. It's 6 out of 10. I did enjoy the film to a point. I thought it looked beautiful. I thought it was directed excellently, but there were a couple of downsides in it which I felt could be improved on from my point of view. But anyway, write down below, let me know what you think, because I can definitely say this movie is going to polarize people. Some people are going to absolutely adore this and adore the aesthetic nature of it. Other people are going to hate it for being a bit too pretentious and a bit arty-farty. From my point of view, very good film, very much well worth going and see. This is not a film for everybody. You're really going to feel by the end of this movie that you're going to have achieved something by actually sticking through it. It can be a tough watch, but it is absolutely a worthwhile watch, and I would urge you to see it if you want to. You know, people sort of will dismiss it because they might think it's a bit arty, but I do think you're missing out on something which is really interesting. It seems very original. It's based on the Michael Faber book, or loosely based on the Michael Faber book from 2000. I have not read that, but I do feel it's a very original piece, and, you know, in a lot of ways it's quite well written. So check it out. That's my review for Under the Skin.